All right. I gotta stop laughing. We're getting into some more heavy stuff here.
I was
I gotta
trying to
stop laughing.
I was trying to hold my breath and you started laughing.
All right, here we go.
Welcome to the Greatest Lists podcast, a show about music and lists. This season, your hosts Jason and Eric are counting down the top 25 guitar solos of the 80s and the top 25 guitar solos of the 90s. Think your favorite made the list? Tune in and find out. Take it away, boys.
Welcome back to season 2 of Greatest Lists, a music and talk podcast featuring lists of the greatest songs of all time. I'm one of your hosts, Jason, and joining me, my co-host, Eric. How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Do you realize we have officially passed the halfway point of this list?
Oh, we have, haven't we?
Number 12. So
Man,
we are over halfway to completing.
man, that's incredible.
Time has flown by.
I know.
Yeah, we just want to linger in the 80s a little bit more, you know.
We'll find a way. Don't worry about it.
Kind of like that stage fog. We just want to linger. Yeah.
Linger.
All right. Hey, here's a quick reminder. This episode is sponsored by HalloweenCostumes.com, featuring the largest online selection of Halloween costumes. But did you know you can also find ugly Halloween sweaters at HalloweenCostumes.com? These are a thing, man. I'm telling you,
Is that a thing?
it first started with Christmas,
Yeah?
but now it's like spread into Halloween. So, we're getting into fall now. Hopefully you're getting some cool air. I'm still waiting for some cool air so I can wear some sweaters. But
Yeah, no kidding.
oh man, you got to go over and check them out. Some great designs with the horror icons like Pennywise, the Headless Horseman, Freddy versus Jason, Beetlejuice. One of my favorites is these two zombie hands that make a shape of a heart that says "You are my zombie."
Oh my gosh. No.
But no, go check out the Halloween sweaters over there. Just fun. Wear them to work on Fridays, that kind of a thing. You'll love it. Best part, you could save 15% off your entire order by clicking the promo link in today's show notes. You click over, the savings are automatically in your cart. No promo code needed. You got to do it before October 31st, though. Take advantage of that. 15%, man. That's nothing to sneeze at.
Don't sneeze at it.
All right, we're going to keep going with our Season 2 list, the second half of Season 2, and the top 25 guitar solos of the 1980s, and a song from the 1980 album just squeaking right in there by the same name. Coming in at number 12 is Back in Black by AC/DC.
Behind the music.
So our spotlight today is on guitarist Angus McKinnon Young, the co-founder, lead guitarist, songwriter, and only remaining original member of the hard rock band AC/DC. I didn't realize that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just circumstances over the years.
I think
He
I
is the last
realized
one.
that. Wow.
He spent the first 7 years of his life in the Cranhill district of Glasgow, Scotland. Music was a big part of his family, which included 7 older brothers and sisters.
Wow.
Every one of them playing an instrument. But the worst winter on record, quote unquote, there in Scotland, and there were some TV advertisements apparently offering assisted travel for families to immigrate to Australia. The Youngs flew from Scotland to Sydney in late June 1963 and took up residence there.
Huh.
Angus took up the guitar at age 5 or 6, receiving 1 lesson from his brother Alexander. After that, he was pretty much self-taught.
Wow.
First started playing on a banjo, restrung with 6 strings. Then his first guitar was a cheap acoustic model purchased secondhand by his mother. After high school, Angus bought his first Gibson SG around 1970 from a music shop just down the street from his home. He says, quote, I got a Gibson. I can't do a Angus impression. I would do his accent, but he says, quote, I got a Gibson SG that played until the wood rot because so much sweat and water got into it. The whole neck warped.
Holy cow.
Yeah, he just put his heart and soul into that first guitar.
Yeah, no
He
kidding.
bought. He was just 18 when he and his brother Malcolm helped to form AC/DC in 1973. Angus was on lead guitar, Malcolm on rhythm, Colin Burgess on drums, and Larry Van Crite on bass, Dave Evans on vocals. They released their debut album in 1975, High Voltage. Then their classic lineup kind of formed after that, with the next album, Bon Scott on lead vocals, Cliff Williams on bass, Phil Rudd on drums. And then, of course, the Highway to Hell album was huge, and tragedy struck right after the release of that, with Bon Scott dying from alcohol poisoning. So the band threatened to quit, but Scott's parents urged them on to keep going on with the band. And, of course, they found a new lead singer, Brian Johnson. I won't do his voice either. That's very hard. And then here we are in 1980 with the album Back in Black, the first with Brian Johnson, which is, I did not realize this, it is the second highest selling album in recorded history behind Thriller.
Yep.
It has sold 50 million albums worldwide, 25 million in the US alone. That is insane,
That's
dude.
crazy. That is so crazy.
Let's get personal.
All right, I can't remember my first experience with AC/DC. If I had to guess, it was the music video for You Shook Me All Night Long.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was probably the first time I saw the band, and probably the first time I saw a girl on a mechanical bull. But outside of that, it was also the first time I saw Angus do the duck walk,
Yes.
which I've always been in awe of. I had no idea that it was a Chuck Berry thing until many, many years later.
Really?
He kind of stole that from him. But, as far as their 70s hits and then the Back in Black album, I was aware of those, basically the hits in the 80s. But it really wasn't until Razor's Edge in 1990 that I bought a full AC/DC album. It's weird because I have this really distinct memory of buying that album and a Technotronic remix album on the same day at a Kmart. Yes.
Man,
So-
spanning the gamut there.
My Little League teacher in full effect there, my Little League coach,
That's awesome.
such an influence on me that
Yes.
I'm listening to Technotronic and I'm buying, AC/DC to
AC/DC.
listen to Thunderstruck. But yeah, so back to AC/DC. Thunderstruck was really my gateway drug into their catalog, and
Yes.
I've loved them ever since.
Yeah.
And I've had seasons with them too. It's weird, you think about a band, you start listening to their stuff, you get into a mode, and then maybe you forget about them for a couple years, or maybe you only hear a couple songs, whatever, and then you get right back into them, with maybe a new album or something. But I've had real seasons with them. One of my favorite cassette singles I remember buying back in the day was Big Gun, which was from the Last Action Hero soundtrack
Yeah.
in the mid-90s. We'll shout out our pal Adam, who's a huge Last Action Hero fan. I never bought the soundtrack, but that single had Big Gun, and on the reverse side it had a live version of Back in Black, I think from Moscow. It was just awesome to play in the guitar in the car. I wore it out there. And then I remember buying Stiff Upper Lip, which was, I think that came out in 2000, and just playing the crap out of that. There's several songs on that album I love, like Satellite Blues. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
I also have the album Black Ice on CD, which came out in 2008. I remember finding it here in Montgomery on a Walmart clearance aisle for $1. I mean, come on,
Gosh, really?
people. Yeah. And so, each time I'm like, one of their newer albums came out, or I stumbled across it by accident, or something happened, and I start listening to that, I start celebrating their entire catalog again. So it's very cyclical with AC/DC with me.
That's so funny.
And I'll go down that path, and I'll be down that path for a week, because
Right.
some people, if you heard one AC/DC song, you've probably heard them all.
Yes.
But I beg to differ. There are some they have a distinct sound, but I think there are certain albums too that they have some other stuff to offer other than what you might expect, But
Well,
anyway,
true. Yeah, that's very true. But still, but you're right. They do have a sound.
yeah.
Easy to pick out. So
I've been a huge fan for a long time, and they
nice.
are probably one of the few bands too that I've collected some of their what I would call newer stuff. Not the 80s, 70s, 80s,
Not the
90s
classic
albums.
stuff, right?
Yeah, not the classics. But
Right.
what about you? How many times have you seen
I
AC/DC in concert?
I've only seen them once.
Oh, okay.
But I can tell you, I can pinpoint the very first time I ever heard AC/DC.
Okay.
I was at my cousin's house, and they lived in a little small town, and there was a gas station in town that was a convenience store, and then on the other side it had a pool table and some tables where people could eat,
Hmm.
and they had a jukebox. And we went in there one day, and there was some guys playing pool, and they dropped some quarters in the jukebox, and the first song that they played was Highway to Hell. And I was mesmerized. Mesmerized. I had no idea who they were or what, I just heard the song. I was just hypnotized. But the next thing I remember about AC/DC is the early 80s and the Satanic Panic.
Oh yeah.
And this guy coming to our church one Sunday night and telling us about the evils of rock and roll, and he was flashing all of these album covers up on a screen, and one of them was the Highway to Hell album cover with Angus has the
Got the
horn
horns.
tails.
Yeah.
And that just made me want to listen to it even worse. I mean, I just
Right.
if I kind of wanted to hear it before, I really want to hear it now. But yeah, I mean, that album and Back in Black were the first couple that I heard, and then a friend of mine in the neighborhood had Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, and so I just got a baptism of AC/DC in a span of about 3 or 4 years. So yeah, I go way back with those guys.
It's so funny. That whole Satanic Panic thing
Yeah.
really had the most reverse reaction, I think, on
Oh yeah.
at least on everybody that I've talked to,
Oh yeah.
because it made that stuff like contraband or taboo or something that made you interested about it more. Well, why is it?
Yeah.
It's just because of
Oh,
this picture, this dude with the horns. I mean, I watch Bugs Bunny and there's a little devil on his shoulder, every once in a while. But
there were probably 4 or 5 albums on my 100 albums list this past summer that were I listened to them directly because I saw them on the Satanic Panic list, and I just listened to them because of that. So yeah, I mean,
yeah.
it had the exact reverse, what you wanted it to do, it did not do.
Right. And it was probably those same fools that when like Mortal Kombat came around and it's showing all the blood and gets, that's just so awful they're going to go out and just slay people,
Yeah, exactly.
Just, come on, people.
I saw them live for the Razor's Edge tour
Mm-hmm.
in 1990. Yeah, 1990. But yeah, Thunderstruck was the first song on the set list, and that place was, I mean, it just came unglued when they played that song, and it just went worse from there. It was such a good concert. So,
I love that music video with all the people like up in the like different floors and stuff.
Yeah.
And I know they had a different drummer with that tour, with that album, but the way he had the 2 like toms or bass drums up, high, and he's hitting them, side to side. That just always got me going. We were so I went to a concert just a couple weeks ago, when we were at RetroCon in Philadelphia, and we watched these guys, the Cybertronic Spree, which are the Transformers, in full Transformers cosplay, and they will do stuff from the soundtrack, the movie soundtrack back in the day, which is awesome. Stan Bush and Vince DiCola, and just some hard rocking stuff. But they also threw in some classic rock stuff too. And for the first time, I heard them play Thunderstruck, and the place just went nuts.
Oh,
man.
yeah.
That song, if you could pull it off, and they pulled it off awesomely. If you could pull it off, you'll get any crowd with that song. I'm telling you.
Oh yeah,
it's so slamming.
Yeah, I mean, they started the drum beat when the lights were down, and the crowd. I mean, it just was like a riot in that place.
Yeah, and one of the characters in the band was holding up these like little cue cards. One had a big picture of lightning, and when they go thunder, you hold it up. Like we didn't know what the words were, but
nobody does. Nobody knows
because it's Brian Johnson. Yeah.
The breakdown.
All right, so just iconic. This album is, but this solo as well. I like the basic pattern that it starts with, and then he just goes for it again. I mean, it was kind of like just an episode ago when we were talking about Summertime Girls. He sets you up, and it's kind of deceptive a little bit, and then he goes for it, and he's got his own style too. He's one of those that I would group in there where he can be melodic but yet technical at the same time.
Yeah.
There's a lot built into his solos, but he's got his own little signatures too. And I won't get on the technical side of that, but I just love his style and how he plays off of Malcolm's rhythm guitars too, like in between the riffs, like you're talking about with Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Yeah,
there's no dead space in there. So while he's playing that rhythm, that riff, he's getting some licks in there in between, even during the solo. And I almost like the outro solo better on this song too, because he gets so high and it fades out, and I'm always like, oh man, I want to hear the rest of that tape. I want to hear him finish the song.
How much longer did he go when they just started fading out? Yeah.
It was just he gets a lot higher, and oh man, I just want to keep listening to the song when it's done.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah, he's very blues oriented. He plays a lot of blues licks. He's very good at that. But he's also, I mean, that intro and this is just speaking to his technical ability. Mm-hmm. That like the intro for Thunderstruck. Mm-hmm. That's not that easy to play. I mean, that takes some dexterity, and he has other songs like that too. And he's deceptively good. He's one of those guys that we've talked about before that doesn't get near the attention that he should for his abilities. But yeah, he has so many little blues licks that he plays, and they just sound so beautiful.
Yeah.
But I mean, and extreme side note, if we're going to talk about his playing, we have to talk about Malcolm Young, who is probably the best rhythm guitar player in all of rock and roll.
Oh yeah.
He holds up that back end so that Angus can play what he does over it, and they just sound like they're in lockstep all the time. That's what you get for playing with your brother.
And even the bass too. I mean, there's several songs where he's playing the rhythm and the bass they're almost doing the same pattern, and it adds so much to the song. There's like a depth there.
Totally. And this is just another side note, but a couple months ago I discovered, and this is the beauty of TikTok, I discovered an AC/DC tribute band in France. And they act and look the part of the entire band.
Oh man!
It sent me on one of those week-long AC/DC binges, like you were talking about. After I first of all, I fell down the rabbit hole for like an hour that night watching all the videos, and the next day just went down a just went on a AC/DC bender for 3 or 4 days just because of just how good their music is, but just how good Angus plays. It's just, I love listening to his blues.
Yeah,
his blues licks. So,
and I think a lot of it is, like I said, there's that stereotype. But you heard one AC/DC song, you've heard them all.
Yeah,
it's because their riffs are so iconic, and you think about those more than you do like his solos. But gosh, his solos are so great too. But you think of, Thunderstruck, You Shook Me All Night Long. I mean, they all have iconic just rhythm parts and riffs that you don't go to the solos for. Even like Hell's Bells has an awesome solo that I'm like, oh yeah, gosh, this is so good. Yeah. But you're just thinking about that iconic
riff at the beginning. Main riff of the song. That's the same guy that wrote that. I mean, he, the same guy that is playing the solo is the same guy that came up with that riff that you sing all the time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean,
I think too, like their drum sound is unique as well. Almost like Phil Collins has a very distinctive drum sound.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're using the same studio or set up each time, but their drums are so crisp and they have like their own sound too, that like, again, it's everything is so well played and put together, and then you get a great production in the albums, in the studios.
Yeah.
That even some of these later albums I've been listening to, I'm like, oh my gosh, these are so well produced, and just the sound is there. They haven't lost their sound into something else. They haven't tried to get outside of what people know them for, which a lot of people can't pull off. There's some bands that can, but you're like, okay, I'm here for AC/DC, so play AC/DC, and they do it. They might do it with every album, but you know what you're going to get. They'll change up the lyrics on you.
Right. Yeah.
But you know what you're going to get,
Well, that whole, there's a 3 album run there from those guys: Highway to Hell, Back in Black, and For Those About to Rock, that came out like 3 years in a row, like 79 through 81, 82. Yeah. Those were all produced by Mutt Lange.
Yeah.
And so that's why they all sound that way. That's how they developed their iconic sound, was because that guy corralled them enough to make them to produce that out of those guys. And there's just not a whole lot of bands that have that kind of sound over that many albums.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't realize, like, from the mid 70s when they put out the first album through like Razor's Edge, there's like a 15-year run where they put out like 13 albums.
Yeah.
They're putting one out every year.
They were dropping an album a year and then going back on the road. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's impressive if you think about it.
It really is. Yeah.
All right. Well, enough AC/DC talk. Let's get into some more songs here. How about that?
Yes.
Number 12 on our list is Back in Black. Angus Young on that solo. Some bonus songs. I could fill up the queue here, really. But if I'm going to recommend one thing, go out and listen to the entire Back in Black album if you have never done that.
Yes.
50 million people can't be wrong, people.
Yep. That's exactly right.
But if I'm being honest, it was really a toss-up for me. I went back and forth between Back in Black and You Shook Me All Night Long to include on the list. We'll go ahead and put You Shook Me All Night Long, because I love the solo on that one too. It's very good. And then one of my favorites, again, I can go a whole bunch of different ways here, but one of my personal favorites is on the next album, the title track, For Those About to Rock, We Salute You. That one, oh man, I love that song so much. And it's one of those with the firing of the guns and just I don't know, it adds so much to the song. Love it. So I'm just gonna do basically those two on this one, but I will recommend go out and listen to Back in Black in its entirety if you can this week.
I would agree with that.
It's fun. All right, so stay tuned. You'll hear those bonus songs in their entirety if you got Spotify Premium. Otherwise, we recommend using the song whip links we provide there in the show notes, or just go out and search some AC/DC in your favorite music app this week. Find us on Twix, is what we're calling it, at
Twix.
Greatest List. Leave us a comment. You can leave us a comment on Spotify as well. Leave us a rating, too. If you've never done that, if you've been listening along to the show, or maybe you're new to the show, leave us a quick rating on Spotify or in Apple Music, wherever you're listening. Would appreciate that. Also, go and find us over there on YouTube at Greatest Lists, and we can take a look at Eric's mug and him talking about some albums over there. And if you want to bookmark us, greatestlistpodcast.com. You can stream episodes at work there if you want to, or whatever you want to do. Find us there. That's our website, and it also can connect you to all the apps that are out there that we're available on. Just click over there and save us in your favorite app. Eric will host the upcoming episode, which is our number 11 selection. A little bit of a play date, I might say.
Oh.
Thanks for listening to Greatest Lists, and we look forward to continuing our list of the top 25 guitar solos of the 80s in the next episode.
You've been listening to The Greatest Lists.